areas, and we try to cover a number of different themes. For today, we will focus on exclusion and new ways of how communities can address different forms of exclusion. You are asked, we are most welcome to share, to have your videos on so we can see who's there, but please do turn your microphones off unless you want to speak. And also, if you want to ask questions, you can use the chat function, of course. Questions or comments. We will have a series of presentations and you can comment on there or ask them questions. Before I pass on to Peter, just a small reminder that there is also a fourth webinar in the series planned for next Thursday, which will be a kind of summary or reflection on the themes we have discussed so far. And everybody who was registered for the first three, or any of the first three, as I understand, if I understand correctly, Harris, any of the first three sessions will get an invitation.
Correct.
To that fourth webinar. So please, I will pass on then to Peter Ramsden, who is Vice President of LDnet and the person who has designed most of the webinars and definitely this one, and he will lead you through the presentations. Peter, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping I was screen sharing and it tells me I am. So can someone just confirm that, can you see a slide on the screen?
We can see a black screen for the moment.
Okay, that's not the screen I had hoped to share.
We saw it momentarily.
And it actually says end
It says end of slideshow, yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it was like your final slide. It wasn't the slide you had on, you wanted to have on, but you were sharing actually your screen.
Okay.
It was the quickest presentation ever.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll try and I've, as usual, got too many windows open. I'll just talk for the moment, and then we'll go straight to Lisbon, in fact. So today we're looking at new exclusions, and we've got examples from Lisbon, presented by Rui Franco, from Turin and Naples, presented by Rosalba de Grotteria and Giuseppe Pace, and from the fishing communities or the coastal communities, presented by Enrique Nieto. So we have three contrasting ones, and we're hoping to cover bits of food, exclusions, education, social cohesion, and digital. So we're covering a variety of different themes across. And the idea is to, in a way, explore how through COVID, or during the times of COVID, building on previous practices and previous experiences, because all of these have a longer history, how different types of communities have responded to these new exclusions. So without going into any more detail, I'll come back to my slide at the end because it has some good points on it. And perhaps I'll just say one other thing. We know that these exclusions can be either temporary or permanent. We know that they can influence what comes next in the way that, for example, after the 2008 great financial crisis, we had a period of austerity in most of the European member states. But that wasn't the only policy response possible. It happened to be the one that followed that. And it'll be the same with COVID. Depending on how we respond, will determine, in a sense, how the future looks. What's clear is that inequality has grown during the COVID time, and particularly because there have been many people left out by national schemes, particularly those who are working in the informal economy, people who had only been self-employed for a short time, and didn't have a long-standing tax record. A number of groups and varying quantities in different member states where different policies have been applied. What we're hoping to see is from the presentations today is the emergence of new social practices and new governance models, which may also offer hope for the future, for a more democratic, a more decentralized, a more sustainable economy. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the first speaker, who is Rui Franco. He's a councillor in the municipality of City of Lisbon, and he's in charge of housing and local development, and he's really the main parent of their quite well-known BIP-ZIP program, which has been going for more than 10 years. So I'll let Rui introduce himself and kick off. Rui, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Peter. To begin, it feels very nice to be together with so many people, which we knowing to share values and experiences with most of them, and even having had the experience, the opportunity to work with some of them. So, Peter, how many minutes each one of us have available?
About 8.
About 8. So, I'll begin my sharing just.
You're doing better than me.
Okay. So Lisbon has established in 2015 an urban CLLD network, which was established on enjoying the experience and the practice and the ecosystem built up by this municipal program called BIP-ZIP, which had mapped the priority intervention areas and communities, and it had built an ecosystem of empowered local organizations, and largely NGOs, which have been annually funded to develop their own responses to the needs of those specific communities. So, and this policy, which is also a formal municipal policy on prioritizing and these communities on the use of the municipal resources, and was also transported to the municipal response to the COVID impacts. And this first slide is just showing a very quick, well, we've built this interactive map showing all the different organizations and interactions which have been part of this network with the municipality on several different types of responses to the impacts of COVID. This is a very simplified way to see it, but the point is that the city had already realized the power of working with the communities and the organizations in an organized network to respond to any challenge, and COVID was not different. This map is available online and is, well, and all the information is dynamic, but it is in Portuguese, but for those who would be able to follow, I would invite you to do so. Together with Peter, I chose 2 examples of those many interventions that are happening. And one has been run directly from the Lisbon CLLD network, which using their own central budget, which is funded by ESF and the RDF, and in our case, now more recently, also co-funded directly by the municipality, on creating this online school support system, where aiming to help students from from 7th to 12th grade to improve their ability to succeed this school year, very aware that it is radically different for a, let's say, 15-year-old to be able to succeed online schooling, depending on the kind of family availability and background that one has. So this, sorry, I need to switch off my bloody phone. So in this just started last February, opening a basically two parallel calls online, one for volunteers to enroll and the other for students to enroll. And what we've been basically doing since is matching supply and demand, matching availabilities and knowledge of these adults, and matching them with groups of students, typically or preferably coming from the same class in school, and in contact with the teacher of a specific subject where they are fragile, to give them permanent online lessons where they basically are helped to study together, to do that, to run their homework, to go deeper on the curriculum and to prepare for any tests and exams which they are facing. The good news on this is that being boosted by all this network of organizations, that just the members of the CLLD network are more than 200. In just a couple of weeks, we've reached thousands of students which are now enjoying this support, but also having even now more volunteers than well. So we are even able to provide as much support as the students would enroll.
And just to be clear, that's 200 organizations, not 200 individuals.
200 large organizations, yes, like residents' unions, cultural organizations, and so on. And this is running and growing, and we are even supporting equivalent networks across the country to replicate this system using all the platforms that we've created, including the ones for the teaching to happen itself, with all the safety and quality monitoring and mechanisms. So a second example is on food support, which on top of other systems which existed and still exist to distribute products itself directly to families, the Lisbon municipality, and this started already last year, so April 2020, the city launched a call to select and to contractualize with NGOs, with not-for-profit organizations, the production and distribution of meals, and with the support of the local council. So the Lisbon municipality has 24 locally elected councils, or equivalent to boroughs, so politically and budgetarily independent from the municipality, to list the families requesting or in need of help. And this was done from the very beginning, also with the city purchasing also directly to the markets, which were collapsing, like small producers around Lisbon that were not being able to sell their products. And so the city is funding the NGOs to produce and to distribute together with the local councils, is also buying food products from regional production and delivering it together directly to the organizations. And since for a year now, an average higher than 20,000 meals a day are delivered to elderly and confined people and people, well, basically people in need. I would like to show you a small video just before closing this, but and more recently, last month, we strengthened this program with contracts to local restaurants which were also about to collapse. So we also contractualized with them to produce an additional 40,000 a week. So on top of the 7 times 11,000 that were already happening, involving 119 restaurants, and these numbers have already like 3 or 4 weeks. Which then the restaurants are providing meals for the same list of people on weekends, giving a break to the NGOs, which were already for a year providing 7 days a week, and now they are delivering more meals to more families, but just 5 days a week. We've delivered and distributed more than 1 million meals already. Let me just see if I can share directly here, or if I need to. Are you following the video? Or so I need to now share a different screen. Just so this is filmed on is one of the 27 NGOs producing and distributing meals, and this one specifically, which is the resident union of a municipal housing neighborhood, which is the biggest. It has 8,000 residents, this neighborhood alone. And this resident union, which was now supported and included within the Lisbon CLLD Network Resource Center, which we are now managing for several months. And we built them a new industrial kitchen and a cafeteria and so on, where this is happening. And so the video is also from the Lisbon CLLD Resource Center with their activity on the meals production and distribution.
Maybe a bit more sound.
Foi a Câmara que criou programa para tentar acudir às famílias e às pessoas que já estão aflitas sem recursos para terem pelo menos uma refeição diária, e de facto vieram bater à porta das instituições que têm uma possibilidade de fazer, e nós temos estado a fazer 200 refeições todos os dias. Em junho começámos com 150, agora é que o valor subiu para 200. O kit que cada pessoa recebe é formado por uma refeição quente, de carne ou peixe. Tem também algumas bebidas, leites com chocolate ou leite simples, e tem 4 pães, 2 sandes que são embrulhadas e que levam lá dentro um doce, um salgado, e as outras 2 estão sem nada porque podem acompanhar a refeição. No primeiro tempo, as refeições era sempre com reforço, mas ia numa embalagem só de 1 quilo. Agora, nesta fase que começou em janeiro, passou a ser meio quilo cada. Portanto, é de facto na mesma o reforço, mas é para também ajudar um bocado, está preservada aquela embalagem. Uma come só ao almoço, a outra come só ao jantar. Para além disso, leva também 3 peças de fruta, portanto, em cada dia. Está garantido, pelo menos a essas pessoas, esse alimento. Os cuidados com a alimentação são os cuidados que temos também com aqueles com quem já vimos fornecendo comida dentro do bar desde 2015, procurando que a comida seja diversificada e que seja o mais possível como se faz na nossa casa, quer para o nosso projeto de associação de atividades e de iniciativas, e quer para o apoio alimentar. As pessoas todas que estão contratadas são pessoas do bairro.
Sorry, just give me 1 second to go back to the. So, well, I get there. Just to say that one of the advantages of working in such a scheme is that almost all of the investment of all the expenditure is creating local employment in the most deprived communities at the same time, and that this structure, which we are replicating across the city, we are already preparing other resource centers across the city, so to include and to empower even more these local organizations. We are now building networks and cooperatives of local producers and urban farming to supply and to be paid to supply this system, including, and now this is just a very side topic or extra, which is within a CLLD funding to an European project from EuropeAid, which is Food Wave. We are installing some food gardening and green roofs and winter gardens in the building itself to supply this residents union with a lot of vegetables, and this is it. Thank you for these minutes.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. That was very interesting. And for those of you who've not got perfect Portuguese like me, one thing is that the food is distributed to neighborhood drop-off points, and people can all pick up their food normally within a 5 to 10 minute walking distance from their apartment. Okay, we're going to have to move swiftly on. So I'm going to now, and we'll come back in questions and so on later, now introduce, I think Rosalba's going first for Turin, and Giuseppe will follow for Napoli. So Rosalba, over to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you very much. So myself with Giuseppe, we are going to, oh, sorry, I don't. Okay, we are going to talk about two initiatives in Italy, and actually we made a comparison of two different Italian economic and social contexts, which are Torino and Napoli, looking at initiatives addressed to support excluded and fragile population and to increase local resilience. So we looked at different stakeholders' involvement, target population, and also different sites. Actually, we three questions are on the table, which we try to answer to, which are there recurrent patterns of approaches and instruments used, and how do these initiatives meet the target group's needs, and what strategies and principles, values, and ethics and type of leadership emerge. So starting from Torino, I try to be very short because we want the two of us to present the two contexts. Well, in Torino, the city council organized and implemented a number of services since the COVID emergency appeared last year, and a sort of a number of actions that are implemented thanks to voluntary associations, to NGOs, to cooperatives, and funded mostly also with the help, with the support of bank foundations. So there are general needs, calls from toll-free numbers, voluntary association answer to these numbers in order to meet the needs, a psychological support desk. Then there is also a support for people with disabilities and for elderly. There are the food emergency actions, and we are going to look to two of these initiatives, donations which people can make on an account opened by the municipality on in a bank. And then there is this network, Turin City Law, free resources for citizens, and then both also for schools and businesses. As I say, the bank foundations have been really playing a very important role, funding a lot of projects in the cities. We are looking at two experiences in Turin, which I think are very interesting, and they are mainly linked with food, because what emerged in this period is that actually there are the new poor, new poverty area, and food is the main one of the main needs. By the way, there is present today a representative of Terza Settimana. I think is participating now, Filippo Scolano, and later on, if you want, you can also make questions. He can answer directly the questions about this experience, or say if he wants a couple of words. Terza Settimana is an organization that was born in 2011 following the experience of the United States, and the name is linked to the fact that families hardly reach the third week of the month. It was hard to reach the third week of the month without a salary, waiting for the salary. And I must say that now it's something that a need that has been recurrent with this emergency. I interviewed Bruno Ferragatta, who is the founder of the organization. And in 2013, he developed the first model of the social market, which is a model which has been transformed in a software and which is replicable. I think that this is very interesting because it's a sort of welfare that has become digital, has a lot of experiences. Terza Settimana has 67 volunteers. It's open every day for 48 weeks a year, has enrolled about 12,000 families and pays out over 10,000 expenses. The initiative consists of the fact that people can access their contact services by shopping online, and then they are delivered at home with the food they require. And most of this is free of charge because it's funded, as I said. Today, the social markets based on the third week model annually reach about 1,300 households and more than 5,000 units. And the experience before it was in presence, there are in Turin, for instance, two supermarkets, the two social supermarkets. So you don't receive a package at home, but you just go and choose your food. And now, because of the pandemic and the emergency, more and more the welfare, it's, as I said, in a digital format. What I found very interesting is a slogan that Bruno gave me, that is, we must move from the virus pandemic to the cohesion pandemic. Another experience that I went through is the Gruppo Belle model. Gruppo Belle is a non-governmental organization founded in Turin in the 60s, and they were used to work in the streets, meeting a number of needs for a disadvantaged group. And in this period, they already were called by the city council to work in the network Torino Solidale in order to meet the needs again of distributing food, because they really could understand the needs of families without networks, especially families of immigrants, all these families that were used to live basing on the informal economy, the black economy, and then suddenly they found themselves without an income, and so they had to ask for instance, for food, to receive food. But they are out, they are shadowed, they must be shadowed because they are not in the formal economy. And then again, there is the problem with them of the people, of their children, that cannot do distance learning because they don't have the support for doing distance learning. And so again, Gruppo Belle collaborated with a food project. The challenge for the future, which we were discussing with them, and which I found very interesting, is the fact that we have to move now from this point, not just providing food and assistance, but making a project for these new areas of exclusion, for these families, for these people who discover themselves without a network, without a support. I leave the table to Giuseppe.
Thank you, and I will continue on the same sharing of the screen. So Rosalba, you have to.
Yes, please. Yes, okay.
And, Naples was totally different from Turin, not because, in the long term, you see more or less the same initiatives, but in the timing. And that is something that is very relevant in order to understand what happens during a pandemic that lasts in 2 years. The first 2 months, what I discovered from the interviews, there were the 2 months of solidarity. There was a huge amount of initiatives. Since the first day on March, Naples was already doing a very innovative and creative actions. And the municipality was lagging behind. Nothing happened at the municipality level, but anything was happening at the voluntary and neighbor level. So then in the longer time, what happens? The capacity of the solidarity of the poor people to the poor people from the voluntary and the small association was going down, and the municipality had to take the role, the leadership. And the main action that I found was about distance learning, solidarity distance learning, that's Solidale. So we go to the next slide.
Yes.
Okay, so everybody's speaking about food. In Naples, one of the main problems is back.
Okay.
You're running.
Okay.
No.
No, sorry. Okay. Okay.
No.
Sorry.
So basically, we are discussing today about distance learning, but when you have poor people, excluded people, one of the main problems is the access to distance learning resources or the space, only space solutions because apartments were too small. So the one main problem was creating a support for disadvantaged families, but not able to use in the correct way distance learning for children. And we are speaking about more than 1 year of time. So they create a system, the municipality, for tutoring activities by qualified operators in order that youngsters could follow the data in place others that those not trampled or not existent in their apartments where they were cohabiting with many people, or help to decode them the new path of learning. So Solidaridad is not the school, that is the slogan that the municipality gave to me. We are working with slogans today. And the promoters are all the existing networks working with the municipality in with supporting poor people in the school. They adapt themselves to do this kind of new activities under the coordination of the municipality. And let's go to the next slide. That it was the first. The second support that is not original and is going to implement since September was about the network of skills and solidarity for supporting psychological emergency in Naples. That is also coordinated by the municipality with a lot of young therapists and also from the university. Especially was very active during Christmas time. And then next slide. We go to what happened in the beginning. So as I told you, Naples was very active in any kind of support initiatives, and I have several interviews with the neighbor council and also with many activists and voluntaries and parish and any kind of people. So, and everybody told us the same. First 2 months, great. And then we were starting finishing resources. We have also to survive by ourselves. Restaurants couldn't support us anymore. Anything was falling down because there was no real support from outside, no financial support. And that was the main problem. Only activities that were taken in charge by external organizations, just like Emergency or the Caritas, they continued, but all the solidarity finished after the second month. So what happened after was that missing the coordination, and we go to the conclusions because the last one, we have the final remarks. What we saw is that in Turin, with a more coordinating role from the municipalities, the action are continuing and they're also upscaling to being bigger. So, and you see the slogan from, the virus pandemics to the cohesion pandemics. In Naples, voluntary initiatives based on charity and crowdfunding, they are very big problems to take off. And so they were all wonderful at the beginning, but then they start to stop in the second, third wave. And so we have a problem now to have a clear image of the real impact of these initiatives. at local level and also on the welfare system. But it's clear that there is a strong interconnection between initiatives and local context. So the needs are different because of the context are different, as you can imagine. So we cannot imagine a sort of, let's say, general approach to the COVID, also for learning, also for support and solidarity. But in this emergency, what emerged also was the weak role of, let's say, of the informal sector that was not able to affirm its presence. Normally, when you miss formal resources for, for surviving, the informal is supportive. In this case, it was exactly the opposite. The informal was not able to support because it was so extended and long-lasting that you need to have a formal and structural state intervention that was missing, for example, in Naples. And then also initiatives call also for more visibility and coordination. So when the municipality took the leadership, the initiative was going on. When they didn't, the initiative was collapsing. So we more or less have similar problems, but with different results in the lasting of during the COVID. So imagine that we have similar initiatives everywhere, but how they last and when they last, it's different. And thanks. And I hope that I was enough clear in a short time.
You did very well. Thank you very much, Giuseppe. We're going to move swiftly to the opposite extreme. So instead of talking about in all three cases, quite large municipalities from Lisbon, Turin and Naples, we're now moving to villages. Enrique, can you do what you can do within the next 8 minutes so we can have at least some time for discussion at the finish? Thank you very much, Giuseppe. That was really good.
Okay, so I hope you can see in full screen now the presentation. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, LDnet, for the invitation today. I would talk more from a rural perspective and the digital exclusion angle. And perhaps digital exclusion in a context of rural areas means that I don't know if now you see a screen in the middle that says, please move the window and share. Do you see that? Yeah, so I need to share again. So basically what it means, digital exclusion in rural areas in general, we observe in Europe that there are many rural areas excluded because A, they do not have access to digital infrastructure, the basic one that perhaps most of the cities, they already have. Second, many of the rural areas do not have the capacity or the skills to use some of the technology, the broadband infrastructure that they have. So it is more a structural problem that they are digitally excluded, that one-off things. And therefore, the main point that I will make in my contribution today is that it requires a much broader action and a structural action and intervention in order to support communities to overcome this digital exclusion. So today I will try to explain a case of a digital transformation process that happened in a village in France that started as an digitally excluded village to now becoming a player for the territory, a digital player for the territory, okay? And they have done that using a new concept that emerged in Europe, smart villages, that basically is a concept that recognizes the capacity of local communities to develop innovative solutions to improve their resilience, so to the capacity to act on the basis of their local strengths and opportunities. So it builds on this bottom-up approach and participatory approach in order to provide a response to the socioeconomic and environmental challenges that they might have. In this concept, I have to say that digital or the use of digital technologies is one of the angles. So innovation could come through digital innovation, but also social innovation. It's an important component of this smart villages concept. So it's not only digital. However, it is true that digital it's kind of the main driver in many places. So in a sense, it's a different approach to the way smart cities was applied, which was much more technologically driven. Here, it starts always on the basis of the needs of the territory, and then digitalization might offer a solution, but there might be other ways to approach their problems. What's important when we consider digital transformation is, like in rural areas at least, every village will start in a different stage. Okay, so you might have already villages that feel excluded in the sense that they don't have any broadband, they don't have any public-private services provided to them. There is low social capital, for instance. There are low digital skills or no digital skills. So they are pretty much excluded for all the opportunities digitalization might offer. And there might be others that perhaps are in the other stream. So they are actually players for the territory. They are able to use their data, their capacity to provide services either to businesses, to public institutions, etc. And within that, you have a range of different stages. Okay, so the example I want to present is actually a village that moved from this excluded stage up to becoming a real player on their area. And this is the case of Lorne, which they call themselves the village of the future. So it's a small market town with 1,300 people in the region of Burgundy. So in the year 2000, basically there was very little digitalization in the area. But there was a very active mayor that decided to bring together people in order to develop a digital policy. So starting the process of digitalization, building, let's say, a vision on where they want to go together in the area of digitalization. So they designed a kind of a first digital policy in this municipality, in this village. As a second stage, they moved towards, okay, let's increase our digital capacities, okay? And they partnered with France Telecom in order to provide these capacities and an education to part of the population as a way of including them in this digital transformation process. 4 years after, they wanted to go a step ahead, and they said, okay, we can already, we have certain skills, we have a common vision, and they decided to build a rural hub where they offer 8 office spaces, a broadband connection, a fab lab, and it's kind of a central point where they bring the community actors and the businesses together to work around different digitalization. So here I just offer or show some of the pictures. So on the left, you see the mayor, and this is from a trip we did a couple of years ago where the mayor was showing us all the things they have done. So that was a very important component of the success, or a characteristic for the success of this process, that there was this leader that was driving the whole movement in the village. And this leader was able to bring together people and draw this vision collectively. Okay, so you can see an image that I took from their website, where they are discussing around all these things and the vision they want to achieve. And then you see there the rural hub, which actually was a former slaughterhouse that was empty. So as part of the vision, they wanted to reutilize that building, adapt it to become a rural hub where they could offer as well some of the capacity building activities they wanted to provide. Later on, they wanted to move a step further, and they decided to bring the first fiber pilot from Burgundy into the area, and bring as well the population together and the citizens, and discuss and agree on what are the digital priorities for them, and in terms of developing new services, so for the population and for businesses. So in this case, there was, for instance, some decisions made in order to digitalize the hospital, so making digital services in the hospital, so related to health. but as well related to some of the businesses. So they were using the hub, for instance, to provide some services to major companies that were going there. As well, they decided to use the hub in order to provide some sort of social and economic services to the local population. So they already, they got some experience, and they started to utilize all these skills and the capacities they generated in order to, provide further services. And then in 2017, after all this experience, they were able to get financial or to draw for their municipality some financial resources, and to dedicate to the hub in order to become already like a competence center that was able to provide even further services for businesses and even for the community, but as well for the public institutions at the regional level. So it's becoming already kind of as what they consider the same as a digital player for the territory. So it's going already beyond that. I also wanted to share with you here some pictures. So very important is the infrastructure, and they decided to go for the best infrastructure they can find. So they put fiber, but their strategy goes beyond just the bringing infrastructure to the area. And actually, it's a kind of 360-degree approach, where at the same time that they brought infrastructure, they try to tackle the skills level of the population and the businesses, so they are able to capitalize on that infrastructure, but as well started thinking as well of the services they can provide. And what are the new opportunities that might emerge. So also they supported new businesses, the creation of new businesses, and as well the development of new services for the population. Okay, and among these new services, for instance, the picture on the left, on your right, sorry, it's an example of how they use this the digital infrastructure they have in the village. And for instance, they put around the most touristic places of the village some QR codes, and they can rent, and tourists can rent some iPads and go around the village, put the iPad in this QR code, and find additional information on this from this spot. So again, it's the use of that technology. So I wanted to end with that, with a couple of messages. So first, it's not just about bringing infrastructure to an area that you will get the population overcoming their exclusion in terms of digitalization. I think you need to bring, at least in rural areas, you need to bring the people together, achieve a vision, and act on that vision. It's a very collective approach. So on the basis of that, of course, you have areas that in the last years they have prepared themselves and worked themselves around these digital issues. So when the COVID pandemic came, they were already in a good situation to be able to cope with the shock. So they had the capacity to move virtual in a quick way. So businesses were able to go online, create their own websites. Farmers, for instance, were able to sell their products as well online. Kids could receive e-education, etc. Okay, so for them was fine. However, those villages that were already digitally excluded, there are no many examples out there of situation in which they could overcome that digital exclusion. So that's why my initial message that this is something that is a change that needs to be part of the structural development of these areas. Okay. Now, what's happening nowadays as well with COVID is that it's also creating some opportunities for rural areas. So those that are digitally equipped, in a way, are able to offer services to people that are interested now to move, for instance, from cities to villages. In a way, the well-being that rural areas can offer is being attracted, is being a commodity. So those rural areas that can offer those services are in a competitive advantage compared to others. Okay, so what's happening is like, okay, many rural areas that can offer these services are getting new people, newcomers. So they need to start thinking again, okay, what are the consequences of this one? How are we going to integrate these new communities that are coming? In some cases, this can create as well challenges of displacement, where, for instance, the prices of housings can get higher because, you know, these newcomers might have more economic power to buy these new houses or pay higher rents. So what's going to happen with those that used to live in that town? Perhaps they are displaced or not. So this can create as well conflict, not only opportunities. A second, I'm going to finish.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to finish. So I just have one more point. Another issue that is coming is about, you know, many people have their secondary homes in rural areas, while they have their primary home in urban areas where they basically pay taxes. Many of these people are now as well moving to these rural areas and putting pressure on the services that these rural areas has, while their tax revenue is actually captured in the city. So how do we overcome this? How do we solve these issues? So my presentation is up to here, Peter. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Enrique. Sorry for rushing you at the finish. We have a couple of points people have made, but can we just, if you have another question, do signal to me and we'll ask. I think Joanna Story had a question that she wanted to pose to Rui about the selection of businesses. Joanna, are you still there? And do you want to just ask it yourself?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah, so I just wondered whether the food producers, you know, how were they selected? Were they already known networks, or, you know, how do you ensure that there isn't further exclusion of other food producers, you know, that sort of thing? Does that make sense?
Can I add to that a second question, which is, how does the municipality contract? Does it have to go through a procurement exercise with the CLD network for the meals, or is it possible to just do this without having a open procurement? Over to you, Rui.
Yes. Well, both procedures were run very quickly in an open call, which then the municipality just had to select the most in need ones, knowing that a lot of these agricultural producers were already had a selling point at the municipal markets, which were then closed. So the city basically asked them if they would be interested on selling them directly to the city once they were not allowed to sell on the traditional methods. The restaurants was kind of the same, was a call to for restaurant owners to apply, and they were basically selected on their scale. And I didn't manage that procedure, but I know that the smaller ones with more in risk of bankrupt were selected, and all with a predefined price. So the city said, we are willing to buy X number, well, 14,000 meals a week by this pre-established price. Who of you are interested on doing so? And and the call for the local NGOs was basically, all those of you available to do this work and have the enough human and physical infrastructure to do so, will you, well, please enroll. And then we again selected and had to match by proximity the NGOs with cooking capabilities next to the neighborhoods where we had received lists of families in need by the boroughs.
Okay, there's a complex point from Thomas, which I'm going to bring in second. Thomas nor Sida, but I wondered if first, if Kirsten, you have a question, I think particularly for the Italians, on the question of solidarity and cohesion. Do you want to just quickly ask or make your point or ask your question?
It's actually back to the previous series from LDnet, where you talked about this solidarity feeling, but also that the sense of feeling disappeared again as soon as you open up the social structure. So I was wondering if whoever is represented here have a recommendation as how to ensure it'll last. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Rosalba or Giuseppe, do you want to reply to that? How will we keep this sense of solidarity going, or is it always there? It just flowers more when we're in a crisis.
I have clear in mind the question is the main problem is that the solidarity is a part of I think a social capital of a place. And for example, Naples has solidarity, but also has limited resources. You can be solidary when you are able to eat yourself. When the situation goes for 1 year time, solidarity stops. You have to look at yourself. You cannot help the other one because also you are in difficulties. So that's the point when the states should arrive, for example, as the case of Lisbon. So in Naples, didn't happen this. So you cannot always imagine that the bottom-up level is able to support the state and to do what the state is not able to do. This is not solidarity. It's only refusing responsibility. That's the point. That the solidarity exists. A big one, it arrives just the day after the things happen, but this is not enough. You need to have governance. You need to have much more from the state, from the financial institutions, from the others. This is real solidarity. It's international. It's national. It's not only neighbor or family householding.
But I think the point you make is very interesting as well, that the length of time of the crisis has stretched the elasticity of of things to beyond breaking point. And if the state does not step in, and this actually perhaps addresses the point Thomas made, where he's almost saying in the strong state models like Germany, where he is, you don't get this flourishing of the solidarity economy. But there are swings and roundabouts here. Thomas, do you want to make a comment on that if you're still there? I don't see him coming. If not, perhaps Ernesto, you've made a comment about EAFARD funds for the rural areas, but I don't completely understand the question. Ernesto March?
Yeah, here. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Yeah, I was listening to Enrique, to his interesting presentation, and since it's rural, the building capacity of public administration regarding the structural funds is one of the subjects I took in consideration in the last years, and I've been as academic involved in a couple of local projects in Italy. I was wondering whether this transition towards pushing for the post-COVID recovery, pushing the rural community to invest, and I mean invest resources, for making the connection more reliable, the offer of services more wider, and I imagine pushing, for example, younger from the local community investing in spin-offs of whatever for giving new services, attracting people working in rural environment, or giving occasion to people living in rural environment for working in a smart, agile ways, and so far so on. But my very question is that is the public administration ready to be so effective in challenging this transformation? First, because one of the worst effects of shifting funds from traditional ways in which the rural area are spending the money to other new ways, without the public administration ready to make this in an effective way, has always, for my experience, a vicious effect on the local population. And in this case, I was really wondering whether, in the case that Enrique had the occasion to look after with his speech, he had the feeling that it is happening without leaving behind, especially the weak part of the population? This is really my question. And the second was the new CLD debate is considering this effect, this post-COVID effect, because I've lost the communication on that.
Okay, I don't know if we can move to the second one, but let's quickly have a response from Enrique. Do you think within the community, I mean, you've talked about the village being excluded, but there are also there are levels of exclusion within villages from those older people, for example, who are less switched on compared to the younger ones who are wanting more bandwidth. Do you just want to comment on that, Enrique? And then I think we'll save the question on CLLD to the final session because we're really running out of time.
Okay.
And we want to give save something for the last one. Enrique, just quickly, if you want to come back on that.
Yes, very quickly. Honestly, I don't think rural municipalities have the know-how and the capacity to deal with digital transformation. And here, there was a last sentence that I didn't mention at the end of my presentation, which I think is key here. There has to be a combination between bottom-up approaches with more top-down initiatives, meaning this municipality of Lorm has strong connections at the regional level. So through their measure, they're able to cooperate as well vertically, using the regional public institutions to draw the money towards these active municipalities, okay? So for me here, the key is to be able to build a social capital, which is a lot of the work in many places that we see with strong social capital, for instance, comes from leader work and CLLD. Build this social capital that allows us, well, bring together the community, but also, which is something new, I think, in rural development, is to establish these more top vertical linkages, and particularly in these new topics where at the local level, you do not have the know-how on how to deal with these things. For instance, you don't know how to build a hub, how to build a Fab Lab, what are the key technologies that you need in order to digitalize your area. You need this know-how to come from somewhere else. So for me, this is the key. And indeed, you might have certain areas in which this might happen naturally because there is a strong social capital and leadership, but there are many, and the majority of them don't have those. And if we start looking at Eastern Europe, for instance, it's even more difficult to get it. So for me, the key is to keep investing in the social capital in the area and provide the enabling condition, the capacity to the local actors to be able to cooperate among themselves, but also vertically with other public institutions.
Okay, I think that's a really interesting conclusion, perhaps, for today's workshop, which is this idea that I mean, France has 36,000 municipalities. I'm in one here. And the need for those small municipalities to be able to work vertically up the governance chain in order to be aligned. And in fact, we have this top-down meets bottom-up coming through in all three workshops so far. The importance of the enabling role of the higher levels, whether it's Lisbon helping its CLLD type NGOs lower down, or Turin doing the same, and Naples perhaps not being quite so effective at doing that. So I think this is a strong theme. What I'm going to suggest is that all of you should join us for the fourth and final workshop, which is the same time next Thursday, so 1800 Central European summertime, at which we don't have any formal presentations in the same way as we've had for the first three workshops. We're going to try to draw out some messages and common themes and issues around the question of how community-based solutions can contribute to the post-COVID recovery. So with that, it's almost past 6:05, which is always my cutoff time. I invite you all to come, and we'll have more time for discussion next Thursday. It'll still be just 1 hour, so it doesn't take up your whole evening. And we'll be able to draw together some of the threads which have emerged from the 9 or 10 case studies that we've been able to take advantage of in the last 3 weeks. Can I thank my four people, 3 cities, no, 4 cities as well, 4 places, because Lorm and Enrique are not a city. But can I thank the case study contributors very much. We would give a round of applause, but Zoom doesn't really work with clapping. But thank you very much. Thank you as the audience for joining in. And we hope to see you next week for the concluding episode of Post-COVID Recovery from LDnet. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye. I've got some more messages which I hadn't seen.